Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you are a returning guest, and welcome if you're new, my name is Jenny and I am wrapping up my April reading today. So a book that I just finished last night is Forgotten Women, the Artists by Zing Tsjeng. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. This is a compilation of a whole bunch of women artists that have kind of fallen into obscurity. Some of which I had heard of, and some of which I had not. The book is divided into different categories based on medium. So there are portrait painters, there are craft, performance and conceptual photography, design, and abstract. And all of the artists are illustrated by a female illustrator as well. So really interesting illustrations and really manageable bite-sized little biographies of different artists. So I would say each artist gets about 3 pages of text. And I was really enjoyed this. I was exposed to some artists that I hadn't heard of before. I think the format is very accessible for anyone. And I'm actually curious to see what other books are included in this series, because it is a series. So I'm assuming there will be Forgotten Women scientists, Forgotten Women writers, Forgotten Women doctors, maybe. I don't even know, but I think it's a really interesting concept, and I'm really glad I read this. So I will check in again with you when I have finished another book.
Hi. So I have finished another book. I promise you it's a different day. I might, in every video be wearing this hoodie because it is my favorite hoodie. I finished The Fire Court by Andrew Taylor on audio. And I really enjoyed the second installment of this book. So this is a series, the Marwood and Lovett series. James Marwood is our main character, and Cat Lovett is his reluctant sidekick. And this is set in the 17th century London after the Great Fire. So the first book takes place when the fire is happening. The second book takes place in the aftermath, and it follows the fire court, which was set up by the king to process all the claims, all the land claims, all the insurance claims, all the different lords and land merchants and people who are trying to, get their space so they could rebuild London after the fire. And there's also a murder in this one. And it gets tied up with Marwood and Lovett, and they work on figuring it out. But the thing is, this second one was not just a easy whodunit. It actually was more complex than that, and you don't end up with like a specific resolution necessarily, which I really enjoyed. I think they're great books. I really enjoy listening to them on audio. I'm a little bit miffed because this is like a 7-book or 8-book series, and for some reason my library doesn't have book 3 on audio, but it has all the other ones. So kind of annoyed because I enjoy listening to them on audio. I prefer it, and now I have to get it out from the library and read it in hard copy. But maybe that'll be good. I could change it up slightly. And I'm really happy that I found a mystery series that I enjoy and that I want to keep reading, because, I don't read a lot of mysteries, and I think it's hard to find ones that I find satisfying, and I find these ones very satisfying. I really like the characters, and I just enjoy being in the London of this time and learning about it. And so it's just, they're very entertaining. I really enjoy them, and I will continue. So I don't know when I'll read the 3rd book, but I definitely will read it eventually. Okay, I'll check in again when I've finished another book.
Good morning, everybody. I finished Ridgerunner by, I think her original name was Jillian with a G, but a lot of people say Gillian. Anyway, Gil Adamson. I'm sorry if I'm saying your name wrong. Last night, and this was so absorbing. I really enjoyed this. It is practically a perfect novel, I would say. I can't think of anything that happened or there were no lulls. It was just completely absorbing to me, a pure pleasure to read. So I would highly recommend this one. This is a sequel to The Outlander, which was Adamson's debut novel. And I gave The Outlander 4 stars, but this was a 5-star for me. I think you could read this without reading The Outlander, but I think that the experience of this was enhanced for me because I had the backstory. And I don't even think I necessarily retained a huge part of the backstory, but, Mary Bolton, who's the main character in The Outlander, she is just kind of on the periphery of this story. But because I knew her and I cared about her already, I think it enhanced my experience of her son and her husband in this story. So I would recommend reading the other one first and then reading this one. But this one was perfection. I can't wait to see what Adamson does next, what her next novel is, because I think she's just improving with each novel. So I'm really excited to see what she comes up with next. She did take a long time to write this book. And what I loved too was in the acknowledgments, she talked about the inspiration for writing this book. And she got the inspiration for writing this from being at a book club about her first novel, The Outlander. And one of the book club attendees said to her, "I wonder what William and Mary's child would be like, how they would be as parents." And that is what inspired her to create this. This novel is about people on the periphery, people who want to be free and want to live true to who they are, despite the fact that the world around you has rules. And it's interesting because it's set in 1917, so it's such a different time, and people were able to live in such a different way then. And they were able to assert their identities in really different ways. But the characters in here are so complex. They're so layered. You learn enough about all of them to care or to be angry or to just feel lots of feelings, which is always my favorite. The nature writing is amazing. You're in the Rocky Mountains of Banff. You're in parts of Montana and Idaho, I believe, as well, and a little bit of northern British Columbia. It's just, it's a beautifully done novel. So highly recommend. If you like nature, if you like, it is historical fiction, but her writing is exceptional. It's literary historical fiction. It's she's a wonderful writer. Loved it. And I will check in again when I finish another book. Hey everybody. So I just finished Hilma af Klint, a biography by Julia Voss, and it was translated from the German by Posten. Okay, so I was reading this book for the Thrive Together Network Book Club. And here's the thing that I'm learning about myself and biographies. And that is that biographies are, I think, a bit too removed from the subject, removed from the emotional motivations of the subject for me in terms of how they're the way they're written. And I know that can change depending on the biography and the author and how they choose to read it, because I know when I read a biography of Joan Mitchell years ago, the author just brought Joan Mitchell to life for me. And Joan Mitchell is another painter from a different era than Hilma af Klint. But this style, the way it was written, and I know this was translated from German. Julia Voss, I listened to an interview with her, and she actually learned Swedish in order to read Hilma af Klint's notebooks and journals in Swedish. And I think that was really admirable. And I do think she was able to capture a lot of what Hilma af Klint was doing. She was a very spiritual person. She was involved in some of the late 19th and early 20th century movements such as Theosophy and different spiritualist movements. She channeled spirits who basically, implied, like, told her what to paint and how to make work. And she felt that she was a mystic by the end of her life. Hilma af Klint did. So I think what happened for me in this was that I found it hard to connect to af Klint as from artist to artist, because her method of making her work was like she was a channel for other ideas. So she was channeling ideas from these spirits instead of bringing them forth from herself, which I know is one of the reasons that people have criticized her work, even though she was making abstract work before Wassily Kandinsky, who was often credited with the creating abstract movement. And what this book puts to rest is the fact that there were other artists, namely women artists, working in this abstract way before Kandinsky, and that Kandinsky at first had a very spiritual bent to his work as well, but then rejected that when he got to New York and saw this kind of modern take. And so he basically self-credited himself as the originator of something that actually he was not the originator of, and that, is convenient for him to do for his work. So I don't hold that against him. And that's kind of an aside from the story. So I think for me, I struggled a little bit because Hilma seemed removed. I couldn't connect with her. I couldn't get into her head and kind of feel much, because she didn't share those things. Like, she didn't write down her feelings. She didn't keep journals about herself personally. She kept journals about these sessions in which she channeled the spirits. And she kept very meticulous records about this. And I guess the thing for me is that I didn't find them very interesting. So that's where I struggled, is that I love her work. I think for me, it is her work, whether or not these spirits, whether or not you believe in channeling or spirits or any of that, the work that she produced was beautiful, and there were amazing works that she created. And she was a very particular woman. She had very specific desires and ideas about things. And so that led to her work being kept away from the public eye for decades. And her family, she never had children or a family of her own, but her brother's family continued on her legacy and created a foundation and continued to promote her work and keep her work valid and keep her work relevant and tour it around and do all those things. So that's wonderful that she had this family who were willing to carry on her legacy. And now this book is here. And if you're looking for something academic that you want to study this artist, it has records of where she lived and where she worked. It has a record of the books in her library, because she donated those books to two different libraries in Sweden. So it is it is a really thorough look at her. I just realized for myself that I prefer to read either something with a bit more conjecture, maybe something with a bit more personal bent to it, with a bit more emotion and connection to the person. I find the biography style to just at times be too removed, and while learning about all the people she encountered and all these different things and Swedish history and what was going on in Sweden during World Wars One and Two was interesting. It was also at times, it felt like I was just reading to get through it. So that is Hilma af Klint, a biography by Juila Voss, and I will check in again when I have finished another book. Hello everybody. So I finished my last read of April, and that was Hideous, Kinky by Esther Freud. This I read along with the 1001 books to read by women challenge, which is put on by Britta Bowler and Sandy from Miss Reads a Lot. So this is, I was already familiar with this story because I have seen the film that came out in the late 1990s. And it was great to read the source material of that and kind of see what, changes there were. But this novel is narrated from a child's perspective. And I think it's actually Esther Freud's perspective because she had this experience with her mother and her sister. And so it's the late 1960s. These children are traveling with their mother and another group of, nomadic bohemian hippie style people from England across Europe and into Africa, and they go to Marrakesh and stay in Morocco and different parts of the country. And it's represents this bohemian style of living where you are in a different time, because I think now people wouldn't live this way with this kind of free spirit, moving around, not a steady source of income, living in a way, looking for yourself while also raising children, and the type of childhood that is described here is, very free form, very sort of going to school, but not with any kind of real, point in mind, a rejection of a conventional Western life for something more free and wild and spiritual in the case of the mother. So, I think that for those who don't mind a child narrator, you would probably enjoy this. It's certainly a different style of travel novel where you're experiencing the place through the child the whole time. This is the perspective always of the younger child. And so I believe in the film, her name is Lucy, but I don't think they actually say, she never refers to herself with her name in this novel. So, you meet a different cast of characters. You see, this very unconventional life that they live in this time period while they're here. It probably follows a year and a half or so, I would say, of their lives as they're living in Morocco, and then they, and then they go home. So, I think I can understand why for some people this wouldn't be a novel you'd enjoy, because I think that the perspective of reading from through a child's eyes and seeing things through a child's eyes, you have to infer a lot of things about what the adults are doing and what's happening, because you're seeing it only through her perspective. But there is a lightheartedness to it. There is a sense of the time, which I think is very valuable to read about, because again, I don't think that people are living this way anymore. It's just not this kind of free form way of living, especially in Northern Africa, or it's just not done this way anymore. unless, I don't know, maybe there are people living this way, but it seems like there's a lot more complications to this now, especially the way the children kind of roam freely in the streets and go off, and the mom doesn't know what they're doing. Like, I just don't think that that type of childhood is still happening anymore. It's things are much more controlled now, and especially with the way you have constant contact and cell phones and all these things. So it's a snippet of a time period that I don't think happens that much anymore. And I think the writing about the countryside and the writing about nature and the writing about the heat and the atmosphere of Morocco is quite lovely, because you do get a sense of the place they're in and how different it is from England for them as they're learning and experiencing it for the first time. But I have to say, I think that reading this was enhanced by the fact that I'd seen the film. So I'm not sure. I can't obviously speak to having read this without seeing the film if you get the same feelings from it. Yeah. So that is Hideous, Kinky by Esther Freud. And that is my reading for the month of April. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back again soon with another video.